Boom. Okay, so I am here with Seth Breedlove, the director of On the Trail of Bigfoot, The Journey. So Seth, um, like, god damn, you're a crazy ass fool. Like, I the idea of this just it's kind of crazy. Like, what made you? Well, I mean, this is your second shot. Like, what made you do this? Right, the follow up to the 2019 Bigfoot documentary you put out.
Uh, well, yeah. I mean, it was a crazy kind of year, so I wanted to get out in the woods with some friends, and Bigfoot kind of seemed like the ultimate impetus to go do that, right? So might as well head out with your buddies and look for something that everyone else says doesn't exist, which I think is what most Bigfoot, investigators are doing is they're ultimately going out in the woods to experience something that everyone else thinks is absolutely laughable. And that's always been really interesting to me is what drives people into the woods to do this sort of thing. And so that was kind of the drive for us to make this movie was as much about why people do this as it was about actually trying to find something for ourselves.
Yeah. So, what sort of training did you? Because, like, with all of that hiking, I'm like, was there a regime that you put in place before you started, or was this more of a, you know what, let's go do this, and you went and did it spur of the moment kind of thing?
Well, yeah, I mean, most of the crew is fairly fit. I'm definitely the most out of shape in our group. And so when we made the movie, I mean, no, there was no training regimen in place. There was no real preparation. It was like, let's go out to the woods and hike. But most of us, I mean, I've been doing this now for 6 years, making movies for 6 years, and a lot of that does involve hiking and spending time in the woods. So, there wasn't anything too crazy as far as what we were actually doing. The hardest trek we took while we were out there was climbing to the top of that Hadley Mountain, which was about a 3-hour hike one way. Um, but it wasn't. I don't think at any point we were in danger of like a starvation or dehydration. The scariest things that happened while we were on the trip mostly revolved around animals. So like I almost stepped on a rattlesnake when I was on top of Hadley Mountain. Um,
Jesus.
and then there's black bear all over the Adirondacks as well, so you have that to look out for while you're out in the woods. But as far as the training and that sort of thing, we were good to go. I mean, we survived it anyway. we I could say that there was one other incident. The scariest sort of incident that happened was one of the guys on my crew ate uncooked chicken at a restaurant one night and threw up for most of the night.
Oh my
So,
god.
so other than that, we were good to go.
Yeah, that's I mean that's the story, right? So you'd be like, oh, we had to go to the hospital, and people thinking, oh shit, you met Bigfoot. You'd be like, no, just uncooked chicken. And that,
Yeah,
that was the thing that took us down.
yeah. I think actually encountering Bigfoot is usually pretty low on the list of things that might happen to you on one of these trips, because the odds of encountering a Bigfoot in the minimal amount of time you've got to shoot a movie like this are slim to none when you consider the fact that a lot of the people we've interviewed have spent years of their lives out in the woods and have never found anything or encountered anything. So I don't think any of us are fooling ourselves into thinking that we're going to go out there and just find Bigfoot immediately. So instead, you got to watch out for things like did I bring my bear or my snake boots? Did I bring our bear spray? And make sure we don't eat uncooked chicken.
Yeah, I think one of the big things I was kind of thinking about, especially at the beginning, and you just walk into that friggin' tunnel cut in, well, not maybe not cut, but in the side of the frigging mountain. And I'm just like, they're not gonna check first, like, because yeah, anything could have been in that friggin' tunnel.
Yeah. Well, again, like some of this goes to the fact that we've been all over the country at this point, making movies. So I think our fear when it comes to that kind of thing has kind of gone down. I mean, we were just in a cave 2 weekends ago with Black Widow spiders all over the ceiling about an inch above our head. So we've on a yearly sort of basis, we up the ante for what we're surviving on any given shoot. But I mean, that cave, the one you're talking about, that cave's not very big, so you can kind of see the back of it when you look in through the opening. So we were fairly confident we weren't going to crawl in there and find like a bobcat or a mountain lion waiting to rip us to shreds. But you know, like part of the idea of the shoot was to go out and to have an adventure. So some of that
Mm.
means throw yourself into situations that are you know, maybe a little questionable.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it makes sense. You know what I mean? Guess it makes sense. But is it a little? I was gonna say like disheartening, just going into these things with that realization that the chance of meeting Bigfoot is pretty slim. So then the thing that you might want to achieve isn't that, right? So,
No, because I think the whole point of the movie is literally like anything that will drive you out into nature to spend time in the wilds is worthwhile, as long as it isn't like burying a body or something, you know. Like, I mean, we went out with the uh you know, the ultimate goal being, let's go tell a really interesting story about this part of New York that is usually overlooked. um Spend some time in the woods, enjoy company of friends who, in some cases, we hadn't been able to see each other in months, you know, due to COVID. um, and really get out and see a part of the world that is worth spending time in. And so anything that's going to drive us to do that, I'm okay with. And so, you know, for me, no, we had a great time. We learned a lot about that part of the country, and we heard some very believable witnesses tell their stories. And we got to spend some time in the woods at night, you know, hearing babies cry over a sound blasting machine. So we did things that, you know, are creating an experience, creating some memories at a time when most of us were unable to leave our houses. So I think that's, you know, the ultimate goal is to go out there and really get to, you know, get to form some experiences with friends. And I think that's why a lot of Bigfooters do it. I mean, that's the question continually comes up throughout the movie, like, why do you do this? What is the, you know, what is the drive in you to continually go out and spend time doing something that most people think is absolutely ridiculous? And, you know, for the most of these people that we talk to, it's because they get to go out with their friends, they spend time in the woods, and sometimes they might have an experience that seems unexplainable. For the most part, they don't. But nobody that I've talked to who does this regularly has regrets about that fact either.
yeah, there does seem a really tight kinship between all the people involved, right? It seems that that journey, that hunt, is the thing that's bringing them all together.
Well, yeah, and I think the point of the movie ultimately is that's the thing that forms a community. That's what some of these guys have formed friendships over. That is how memories are made, and that's how they get to go out and experience the natural world. um and I think that, you know, like Dr. David Floyd, um in the movie, talks about how that is a very ancient idea. Like there's something very ancient about people going out and trying to experience the unknown and either doing it alone or together. But ultimately, that is something that's gone on for as long as people have been on this planet. Um, and so it seems like Bigfoot is a more modern day topic, but it really isn't. It's there's always been something in the woods calling us out to find it, and for some people, it's just an 8 foot tall hairy primate hiding in the woods, and for some people, it's something else entirely.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Like, what do you think there is a chance that what people are seeing is maybe a bear, right? A large bear standing on its hind legs.
Sure, yeah. A bear. It could also be a person. Like I think there are I would say you can explain away most Bigfoot sightings with misidentification of a known animal,
Mm.
and that's just the way it is. Like that's probably been going on for a couple hundred years. People seeing things in the woods that they, in that fleeting moment, can't describe or can't explain, but it might be explainable, as being a bear on its hind legs. Um, that's definitely one of the big culprits when it comes to what people are actually seeing. Now, having said that, I know people who've claimed to have seen Bigfoot, from feet away, like right in front of them. Believable witnesses, like even the 76 Whitehall incident that's talked about in the movie, was numerous members of law enforcement that claimed to see a Bigfoot in that field. There were 11 people off of that road in August of 1976 that claimed to have seen Bigfoot. Corroborating 11 corroborating witnesses is a pretty solid number of people claiming to see the same thing,
Mm.
especially when some of them are local police. So, um, I don't think every single sighting of a Bigfoot is misidentified animal, but I think a large number of them certainly could be.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely am open to thinking there's something out there. Like, have you ever listened to? I think there's a podcast called The Thing Is, right? And there's a section of it where they look at kind of scary incidents that have happened to like the guests. And I think one time they had Matt Stokes and Jesse Leach on, and they were talking about, I think it was Stokes who was talking about an incident, a few incidents he'd had, like with wolf children and a possible Bigfoot sighting.
Mhm.
And I think he mentioned that there was something about if you because he's got some land. I forget what part of the country he's in. It might be Wisconsin, right? And he said that there's times when he went out to the river and he had a gun with him because it was, he was new to the area, wasn't quite sure, and nothing. But when he didn't have a gun, that's when he kind of thought he'd seen something, right? There was an incident where he had something throw stuff at him, and I thought it was interesting because like I think on the first night it looked like, I don't know if they were guns, but some of the people were holding up things that looked like guns.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. They're armed, but that's not for Bigfoot's sake. That's because we're in territory where there's black bear all over. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. For the most part, you're anytime I'm with a group that's carrying, they're typically carrying because of local wildlife more so than like, let's kill a Bigfoot.
Yeah, no, but what I mean is, do you think that maybe what Stokes has said is might be right? That
Mhm.
it kind of knows weapons, so won't
Sure.
come near you if
Yeah,
you.
I would think that if they're intelligent enough to stay hidden this long, that they would have to have some sort of sense, or at least, ability to recognize a weapon. And you would assume, since settlers have been, since I guess since we were wandering the wilderness here with guns, even in the 1600s, 1700s, that they would have some warning as to what those are, like some sort of ability to recognize what those might be. And so I would assume that that's definitely a possibility when it comes to Bigfoot and avoiding people, and it's interesting whenever we go out, whenever it's just my crew, we don't have guns because we're usually traveling. You can't travel around with guns. But we it does seem like whenever anything interesting happens, it's when we're completely unarmed. And in some of these places and some of these situations, you kind of wish you were armed, because like when we were in the Olympic Peninsula last month, or I guess back in April, we were unarmed and we were in places with, rampant mountain lion populations. So you really want to be careful. You have
Yeah.
to be careful when you're out in the woods, that you do have some sort of weapon. But for the most part, we don't. And that always seems to be when it's just us. That seems to be when stuff seems to happen.
Yeah, I do feel that, yeah, it does make sense. Because I think I've heard stories where people have, I think there's been talk that possibly Bigfoot has kind of some mind reading kind of abilities. Others, I think I've heard where people think that he can travel the astral plane, which, when you have the incidents where people say they see the footprints and then he's not there, like you do wonder, right?
Sure. I think we have a tendency when it comes to those cases. I think what happens a lot of the time is we are trying to solve one mystery with another mystery. So like it's so difficult to explain why don't we have a body? If these things are real and they've been here for as long as we think they've been here, if people have been encountering them for as long as they claim to have encountered them, we should have a dead body. There should be a body somewhere. Why hasn't a hunter shot one? Why don't we have convincing video evidence? These are all the questions skeptical, rational people ask. It's the same question I ask. So when you're asking those kind of questions, then you start to ponder some of the more, the more like paranormal theories as to why we don't have those answers. And so you're, like in the end, you're trying to solve a mystery with another mystery. The fact is, if any of those things are true, if it mind speaks, if it can cloak any of that kind of stuff, then we're never going to know if it's real or not.
Oh, yeah.
You're never going to be able to solve it at all. But it doesn't, like those stories are super fascinating to me, and I think they added just another facet to the topic that a lot of people find interesting. And I mean, going all the way back to Leonard Nimoy doing In Search Of, those sorts of stories have been talked about.
Yeah, I think what we know, I think it's fair to say that something like Bigfoot probably did definitely exist in the past. Whether it still does now, who knows?
Yeah.
But I think, when we have seen, the dinosaurs and just like there's proof of like giant horses and giant turtles and things of that nature, right? Bears, even bears that were bigger. I think they've found remnants on the Serbian crossing.
Mhm.
Right. So wait, if you think about, they found a dinosaur under some of the thawing ice out there. So
Right.
where you have these frozen areas, it's possible that bones could be there,
Mhm.
or even that bones may have been mixed up with dinosaurs.
Yeah, sure. And I think, well, there's also the fact that, mountain gorillas have been known to bury their own. So it's totally possible that if this is some sort of unknown primate, that it could just be burying its own as soon as they die, and we'd never find it, because how often do we find bear bear remnants in the woods? It's very rare. I've
Mm.
talked to park rangers about bear, like how often they've come across dead bodies, and it's very rare that that sort of thing takes place. For one thing, like where I am in the east, the soil is extremely acidic, and so when those bodies drop on the ground, it's immediately eaten by scavenging animals and then sort of decomposes on its own. And in about a month, you would have no idea that that was anything.
Oh, damn.
Uh, so it's totally possible that they could just sort of disappear in that way as well. But I mean, it is one of those questions we're gonna all anyone with a rational brain is gonna ask that question, because why I ask the same thing. Like you would think over this amount of time we would have something.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think I think there's definitely reasons why we might not, especially when you think of the amount of forested areas, like the you know, I guess some of these areas aren't mapped, right?
Mhm, mhm.
There's definitely areas. I mean, even in America that haven't been fully discovered yet.
Yeah.
So there's probably something that could be there. They're finding new species of spider and frog and what I mean, like squirrel. I think they found a new breed of squirrel just the other month. So you know what I mean? If these things can stay hidden for all this time, you do kind of think it is possible that this
Mhm.
thing could be gone, especially when there is a version of Bigfoot in so many of the indigenous people's kind of histories and lore,
Mhm.
which
Yeah,
does kind of make you think that there was definitely something like this.
yeah, and even in the Adirondacks, you've got mountains and uh, parts of those forests where people don't go or haven't been because of the fact that they're either so rural and isolated that you can't get there, or because they've never bothered to trail it or put in a trail. And how many people really want to bushwhack their way up to the top of a mountain for no apparent reason? Like there aren't a lot of people that are going to do that. And I mean, we took a helicopter trip over the Adirondacks, and I can tell you that there are mountains in that area that have never been traveled by people, even in the Adirondacks. Um, so it's totally possible. And there is, it isn't just the fact that you've got the Native American history of these things, because that certainly exists, but you've also got the fact that the behavior of what people have been describing for a couple hundred years aligns with what people are still describing encountering in the woods today. Not necessarily just the way they look, but the way they behave and the things they do. And some of those behavior patterns are really obscure and weird. Uh, and it would some of those things, it would be very difficult to hoax. So personally, I'm extremely optimistic that these things exist. I always say I went from like 30% that they existed a couple years ago to about 90 today. But I
Okay.
just need to see. I have to see one for me to come all the way around to 100.
Yeah. I mean, I get that. I mean, I do definitely get why some people might be skeptical, but I definitely think that there's a lot we don't know, you
Mhm.
know.
Yeah, I agree.
But have you, like, where else have you searched or have you considered searching? Because I remember listening to Justin Wren talk, who has a charity, Fight for the Forgotten, with the pygmies. And I think he was saying that, like, they have kind of a kind of story of Bigfoot type creatures,
Mm.
and that's in the Amazon. So have you ever thought of maybe venturing out to those spots to
Well, heck yeah, man. Like I would go to I'd love to go to like the Amazon. I'd love to go to China. There's a lot of those locations I'd love to go to. Our problem is at the end of the day, we're a completely independent, autonomous production house, right? So we run everything ourselves, we fund everything ourselves. We have a Kickstarter at the beginning of each year, which helps pay for the production of all the movies we make during that year. But we're putting out, 4 to 6 movies per year.
mm,
And so most of that comes back on us, and we fund it. So until we can get our funding up to where we would need it to be, we're pretty much still relegated to the United States. But that isn't to say we're going to stay here. I think long term we definitely want to get, go international with it. But we've been all over the United States, from like the deepest swamps in Louisiana and Arkansas to the mountains in the Olympic National Forest and the Adirondacks, East Coast, West Coast, desert, Southwest desert. We've been to Area 51. We've kind of been all over, the U.S. making movies.
yeah. So what keeps you going, man?
Uh, well, I'm a storyteller, so before I did this, I wrote for newspapers, um, and so I love filmmaking and I love storytelling. And most of my crew are friends of mine that I've been friends with since childhood. So this is something we do together that, like it taxes us creatively. It gives us a creative outlet. We have a lot of fun as a group putting together these stories. This Thursday, we're going to have a big crew meeting here at the office, and we'll come up with ways we're going to shoot the recreations for our Rougarou movie that's coming out later this year. So like we're always working on something together as a team, and most of us grew up together. So we like filmmaking, and we have an interest in the paranormal. So this combines two of our passions, I guess. And then also just the fact that I like to provide for my family by making movies and selling them. So, which I mean, that's the cold-blooded reality of filmmaking is you have to make a living at it to keep doing it. So that's also part of it.
Well, I think it makes sense. And, I think if everyone was completely honest, that yeah, that's a part of why they do it as well, unless you are just so comfortable money wise, you don't even have to think about it.
Yeah, we're not there.
Oh man, it's very. One thing I thought was very interesting was, and I liked, was the fact that you weren't trying to, force people into thinking anything, or like even when there was the noise in the woods, you weren't like, oh, that's definitely it. That's definitely you. You were kind of, you still keep yourself open to the different possibilities of what these things could be.
Well, I think most people, if they're being honest, have at least a vague interest in the unexplained. So whether it's ghosts or Bigfoot or UFOs, whatever, I think most of us have some sort of interest in these topics. I think where television and a lot of documentaries go wrong is they assume that an audience wants to be convinced that this
Mm,
stuff's real. And I don't think an audience wants to be convinced. I think an audience, an average audience, a general audience wants you to present them with the information and let them make up their own mind. And when you're attempting to sway your audience one way or the other, I think they tune out almost automatically. And I think that's why, the same 1 million people watch every paranormal TV show. It's because that audience of 1 million, that's the audience that's already in. They're going to be in whether you convince them or not.
yeah.
But I think the actual audience of people out there, the number of people that are out there that would be interested in these types of topics is far larger than 1 million people. And I mean, we've already shown that, considering the fact that the audience for most of our movies is a few, 5-6 million, and then it grows from there. Um, there there there's a lot of people that love this stuff or have a vague interest in it, who just want to hear the stories, who maybe don't believe it at all, but they just want to hear the stories. And when you're spending the entire film trying to hit them over the head with your belief hammer, they tend to just tune out.
Well, yeah, I think that point was very clear last year when people just got sick of the news, because I think we found that a lot of stations are trying to tell you what you should be thinking rather than just being like, well, these are the sides of the stories. You decide on what you think, right?
Sure.
And I think that's what it comes with storytelling, right? You're not trying to force your opinion. You're just kind of, yeah, you're just breadcrumbing people. This is the information. Like, what direction do you want to go? It's up to you. And that's what I liked about your piece. That's what you were doing. You were talking to just a lot of different people to get, their opinions, and you didn't, you weren't trying to prove them wrong. You weren't trying to belittle them. It was just listening, letting them tell their piece. And yeah, I thought that was intriguing.
Yeah, that's the ultimate goal of our movies.
How did you choose the people that you spoke with?
Well, some of them, this is a return to a topic we'd already covered in 2016. So some of these people we'd interviewed in 2016 for the Beast of Whitehall. And then others are people who I've wanted to talk to for a while, who I was familiar with. I knew I wanted to interview Bruce Hallenbeck because of his connection to the Kinderhook creature case from the 70s and 80s. And then there were people like Emily Fleur, who I know through her podcast, who I thought was such an interesting voice because she's so friggin' passionate about Bigfoot, and she kind of, I don't know, she's kind of a counter to some of the crotchety old men that we interview in these movies, and she's so excited and wide-eyed about the topic. And then some of them just fell into our laps. Like we interviewed a witness in Whitehall who claimed he saw a Bigfoot cross the road in front of him, and that was just someone that came to us when we were there. And so,
The sighting from last year.
yeah.
Yeah.
So some of those just fall into your lap during the filming of the series. But I've been doing this now I've been making movies for 6 years, but I've been interested in Bigfoot for probably 15, 16 years, something like that. So some of these names are people that I've known for a little while and was able to just reach out to them and ask them to be involved in it.
Right. Yeah, I did like the fact that you had Emily in there, because I don't know, like, this isn't something I've ever really taken a deep dive into, but whenever it's kind of come up, it's always been intriguing. But from the little bit that I've just been exposed to, it usually is guys. Right, it's usually guys telling these stories and being like, oh, well, we were on the porch and drinking and we saw this thing, or we went and did a thing and we thought we saw this thing. And so I thought, to have this young lady talk, I thought that, as you said, it's like that counterpoint, and it kind of shows that, yeah, this isn't just one type of person.
No,
Like,
yeah.
this intrigues everyone.
Yeah, I think too, again, this is like one of those issues with television where television really only seems to latch on to like one type of person. And the fact is, like, especially with the paranormal in general, especially ufology, the people that are into this run the gamut of lifestyle, race, sexual orientation, age, all this stuff. Like they're kind of like, it's a little bit of everybody. And Bigfoot, especially these days, there's a younger crowd that are into Bigfoot who just haven't been seen on TV, so nobody has any idea that they're into it. But like, having been involved in the community for a while, I knew Emily through that. There's a lot of people like Emily who have an interest in this topic. Emily was perfect for this because she's in that area too, and also she has a connection to the Whitehall story because she was really into to that case. She had a big fascination with that Whitehall Bigfoot case. But there's definitely a much larger a much broader range of people that are into these topics than what television would have you believe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for real. Yeah, it's a weird that's what we get drip fed. That only a certain type of people like this and a certain type like that, and oh, this gender is the only ones that like this. It's weird because once you actually get out in it, you see the truth, and the
Yeah,
truth is, shit intrigues everyone. you
yeah, yeah, yeah,
know.
yeah, for sure.
like when you think of the areas you want to visit, right? Do you ever take I don't know if you can get this sort of information, but is there records of maybe dwindling numbers of, like, if there's deer in the area, suddenly deer numbers go down for an unexplained reason, or there's not as many fish in an area, or is there a way of looking at kind of stuff like that which might possibly tell you there's something in the region?
I've heard stories like that for sure. Even most recently, one of the things that we came upon while we were making our next Bigfoot movie out in the Olympic Peninsula was that the Olympic Peninsula is, in terms of like sheer number of Bigfoot reports, it's one of the most active areas in the country. And one of the weird things about the Olympic Peninsula is it's at the top of Washington, right? It's sort of like the tip top of the state of Washington on the West Coast. It should be prime grizzly bear territory because
Mm.
they're all over the Pacific Northwest. They're in Northern California. You could drive 2 hours to the south into Oregon, and there's grizzly bear everywhere. But up in the Olympic Peninsula, there are no grizzly bear. And there's no way to account for that. It still like vexes scientists. They can't figure out why that is. And the only thing that really will push a grizzly out of an area is that they have a competing predatory animal. So
Mm.
something competing for the food source locally. So I thought that was kind of interesting because it leads you to theorize, well, maybe there's so many Bigfoot in the area that they're competing, they're just sick of competing with them for the food. But you have no, I mean, you're just theorizing, and it's fun to theorize, but there's no way to tell. As far as you could definitely look into dwindling deer population, but you're also going to have the issue of that could be, disease, that could be traffic, it could be any number of things that would account for that. But those kind of like patterns are something that we're starting to look more actively into with each movie, because I think going forward we're trying to pick projects where we might be able to put ourselves in a situation where maybe we could have some sort of encounter, if something's there. So it's definitely something we're looking at.
Yeah, yeah. Now, this is something that I kind of thought about, right? Because the way humans are, like, we're not the greatest people, because you can guarantee if you at the end of your doc, you're like, and here is Bigfoot. Someone is gonna go to that spot trying to kill Bigfoot. Someone will want Bigfoot on their wall. So do you ever wonder about that? That if we found Bigfoot, that might be the end of Bigfoot.
Yeah, that's always been, we actually just had a whole conversation about this recently. That's always a fear. My thing with that though is we've spent hundreds of years trying to find these things. Just because say we find one is real doesn't suddenly mean that they're any easier to find.
Yeah,
Like I think no matter what, they would still be incredibly difficult to find. They're still going to be incredibly difficult to locate. And so I think that I don't know that that would be an issue, just because I just because there's an additional 50% of the idiots in the world running around the woods now with guns and beer looking for Bigfoot doesn't mean that they're actually going to find one.
yeah. I mean, true, very true. I mean, what if big and look, this is a hypothetical that is 99.9% never gonna happen. But what if you did stumble on Bigfoot, and Bigfoot can talk, can communicate with you, and Bigfoot is like, hey, we can have a conversation, but I don't want it taped, right? So you can't tape it. We can talk, and that's it.
Yeah.
Are you doing that conversation?
Oh
Knowing that you
yeah.
can't, there's no proof of it that you can put out into the world.
Right. Yeah. Well, first of all, I would probably do it anyway. I'd find I'd find some way to hide it. Um, and yeah, but either way, yeah. If I could definitively know for myself that Bigfoot exists and no one else could, I would definitely want to know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'd take that too. Because then at least I know, at least I've got that, yeah, no, this is real.
Yeah.
Right? And he might tell you why he's not coming out or something. It would just be intriguing as hell.
Right.
So is there like are you open on everything? You know, whether it be like, you know, Bigfoot, UFOs, ghosts, demons, just all of that kind of stuff. Or is there some stuff that you're just like, probably not?
Well, I mean, I'll go wherever the evidence or the preponderance of evidence takes me. And you know, I've seen enough evidence of Bigfoot that I think that there's something to it, and there's something that merits, you know, it merits looking into. Um, Ghosts, we're doing a ghost series, like an on the trail of ghost series, but it's we have yet to encounter anything while making this series that would make me think that ghosts are real. UFOs are real. Like I don't even know how, you know, like when the government is pretty much acknowledging that UFOs are real, we know that UFOs are real. Now, whether or not UFOs are aliens, I have no idea. But yeah, I mean, I'll pretty much look into any subject because what drives me isn't necessarily proof that any of this is real. It's the stories. So I'm interested in stories and storytelling and how stories evolve over time and how stories become myth and myth becomes, you know, legend and that kind of thing. I'm interested in the evolution of story, and that's what I think I'm at the end of the day. That's what I'm continually coming back to. So there is probably no weird topic that I wouldn't look into.
And with those topics, right? So what is it? Do you, if you hear something, right? You hear some sort of myth, legend, someone telling a story that you think that sounds intriguing. Do you then you know, you take that deep dive to try and see if you can find more information? Is it that the thing that gets you, or is it like someone who you trust coming to you with something, or what's
Well,
the thing that kind of starts the journey for you?
that's a cool question. Yeah, I think it depends on the type of project. So like we make, you know, we make these movies that are basically just retellings of legends, and we've made them about like the Mothman of Point Pleasant and the Flatwoods Monster and those kind of movies. Those movies are driven more by like cinema, like
Mm.
the cinematic styling of the movie. What, you know, like the one we're working on right now has like all the recreations are being filmed to look like found footage. So those are a blast to make because they allow us to experiment with style and things like that. And the way those begin is I'll pick a topic that appeals to me at the time, and then we kind of get to fill in the pieces of what the style of the movie is going to be. And that's kind of how those come to be. On the Trail of is informed more by the witness stories, where witnesses are, you know, like if we can get enough witnesses to come forward to talk about it, and that's what tends to drive whether or not we're making that movie. But you know, for the longest time, I mean, for 4 years, the first 4 years we were around, we only made the legend type of movies, and you know, the way we keep that fun is experimenting with style and the way we actually make the movies, and that's what keeps me coming back to those, is always challenging us creatively.
Ah, no, that's cool. That's cool. So we might see a on the trail of skinwalkers or something like that maybe in the future down the line.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. I would say that's inevitability that's going to happen.
Oh man, that all of that is interesting, but it's creepy as hell. Whenever I hear those stories, you're just like, oh my gosh, and then you're just like, oh damn.
Yeah, that's a weird topic. I was just asked recently, like, what the scariest monster is that we've looked into, and I always go back to the Skinwalker and Skinwalker Legends. That's the creepiest stuff there is.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. Cool, man. So, yeah, you know, this drops tomorrow, right? So, what?
Yeah, midnight tonight.
Yeah, what's usually the thing? So you know, you work on these things, right? They go out, then is it straight onto the next one, or do you do a lot of, you know, on the road promoting this? Or
Oh
like,
no, yeah, no. We're already. I'm as I got on the call with you, I was hitting save on Premiere because I'm in the middle of editing Rougarou, and immediately after that, I'll be editing um, on the Trail of Bigfoot: The Discovery. And before Rougarou, I was editing on the Trail of UFOs: Dark Sky. So actually, it's been 3 months since I touched on the Trail of Bigfoot: The Journey, maybe 4 months now. So there's not only like it's not only on to the next one, but it's like on to the next one, two projects past the movie you're watching. Is like how we tend to be. So we've got 4 in the can right now. We just got back from Chicago filming another one last weekend. So we're always working on something. And the one thing I can say about us is that we don't like to retread the same ground in terms of style and tone. So
yeah,
we try to, even though we're obviously covering Bigfoot multiple times in these movies, we always try to switch up what we're doing with them. And we made a movie named called Momo, the Missouri Monster, a couple of years ago that was done entirely in like this faux drive-in movie theater style. And we're always trying to keep it interesting, not just for the audience, but for ourselves as well, because we're always working on so many projects in any given year.
yeah. I mean, that makes sense. And if a large, you know, company distributor came to you, like a Prime, a Netflix, a Disney, you know, someone like that, would you make them for them, or is this something that you just want 100% like control over?
I mean, I think it would depend on the way the deal was going to work, honestly, because like I do love being independent, and if some huge corporation came, we've had TV production meetings with production houses, and it never went very well. And I'm friends with guys that work in Hollywood. I'm friends with Adam Wingard. I was with Adam when he was doing pre-production on Godzilla versus Kong, and I've seen that process, and it's not really something I want to be a part of.
Yeah,
Um, and so, like for me, I love controlling what we do and getting to sort of steer the ship. That isn't to say I wouldn't be interested in making movies for another for a big company, but it would have to be something where we were kind of doing it off on our own. And what are the odds that would happen?
yeah. I mean, that is a tricky one to maintain that control
Right.
and still do what you do. But yeah, I mean, what you're doing is working right now, so you know, all power to you, man, to get to keeping this moving and keep on putting out these interesting documentaries.
Thanks, man.
Oh, no worries, man. I appreciate you, you know, dropping by, giving us
Yeah,
some
thanks for
time.
having me.
No, it's been great. And hey, when you know, you're about to put out one of these new pieces, love for you to come back and you know, we can shoot the breeze and discuss what craziness you've done next.
Sure, I'll send you any number of projects we're working on as soon as they finish.
Outstanding, man.
Cool.
That'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. But yo, protect yourself when you go out to these places, man, because all I could think about when you're hiking through the forest be like, God damn, what if there's something round that corner?
Yeah. Oh, that's part of the fun.
Yeah, I guess so. You know what I mean? The real life Robert Landon. All right.
Yeah.
Steve, thank you so much for your time. And I hope that, yeah, you know, people just keep on funding these things, because I'm definitely looking forward to the next one.
Cool. Thanks, man.
All right, man. You take it easy, yeah?
Take care.
All right. Thanks a lot, man.
Bye.
All right.